afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait till folks get into the room, but I want to thank all of you for coming today. We have about 140 folks who have signed up and registered for this event. So we're excited about being able to offer this opportunity to learn more about the Working Washington 5 grants. What I'm going to do, first of all, is just kind of do some housekeeping and share a little bit of perspective. I want to just take a moment to welcome everybody and to say that we're just really grateful for all of you to be here. I want to first of all just begin by saying, if you are interested, put your name and your organization into the chat. We'll have that as a record. When you have an opportunity and you have a question, put that in the chat. We're going to ask everyone to wait to the very end before they are going to voice questions until all the presentations are finished. We're going to do an introduction of the panelists, but first I'm going to just share my screen and share a little bit of a background. So I'd like to just begin by saying my name is Lisa Smith. I'm the executive director of the Washington State Microenterprise Association. I'm an older white woman. I've got a blurred background. I've got a plaid kind of flowery shirt on. And I want to just make sure everybody shares, just information about who they are and what organization you're with. This is a Working Washington Grants Round 5 information session. We're really grateful to have Shannon Halberstadt and Michael Wallenfels here from the Department of Commerce and ArtsWA. We also have Lynn Fetch. Lynn Fetch, thank you for being here. We're going to do some introductions. We're going to have Shannon do a kind of a broad foundation background about this initiative, as well as having Michael run through the actual grant application. And finally, we'll have questions and answers at the end. Just for those who are not aware, WSMA really focuses on helping nonprofits around the state build their capacity to serve very small businesses, and that includes the folks in the creative economy. So we do this, one, by providing partners around the state with training. We provide workshops like in the last year around working with people with disabilities or clean green businesses, or just workshops to help nonprofits do their work better. We also provide small grants to organizations around the state so that you can serve more businesses on the ground. And finally, we are the Washington State affiliate in collaboration with the Department of Commerce to help businesses wherever they are find the resources they need on Evergreen BizLink. And so you can find us with our social media, and we're really grateful to be here today. What I'd like to do now is invite our panelists to do just an introduction so people know who you are in the room. And I'll begin by Shannon. If you could just share about you and your new role with Department of Commerce. And this is a huge vision. When communities have a strong ecosystem of creatives, there's economic vitality. And so that's why this is so important. So go ahead.
Thanks so much, Lisa. My name is Shannon Halberstadt. I'm really excited to be here with you today. I'm the new creative economy sector lead with the Department of Commerce. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I also should note that I'm a white woman. I'm wearing a multicolored geometric collared shirt, and my background is a skyline of beautiful downtown Spokane at sunset. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, everybody, for joining. My name is Michael Wallenfels. I am the communications manager for ArtsWA, also known as your Washington State Arts Commission. And I am a middle-aged white man with a bald head and probably needed a little bit of a shave. It's kind of a scruffy, not quite a beard, but not quite clean shaven, and a blue button-up shirt. And I've got a headset on, and my background is blurry. And if you could see it, it would be our classy offices here in downtown Olympia, Washington. And I'll pass it on to Lynn to introduce herself.
Unmute myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Lynn Fetch. I work for the Department of Commerce in the Office of Economic Development and Competitiveness, OEDC. I am the Small Business Grants Manager. Myself and team managed the Working Washington Grants Round 5 and previous Working Washington Grants 4 and 4.5 as well. And we also manage the Convention Center Grant Program. I'm a white woman. I have blonde hair and I'm wearing a yellow shirt with a blurry background, not as beautiful as Shannon's or others, but I'm here nonetheless. Yep.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, everybody. And so, Shannon, would you just lay the foundation for this work and your role and why this is so important, this grant round for both nonprofits and business in the creative economy?
Also the mute button. I will, thank you, Lisa. And I put together a few slides, Michael, if you want to share the slide deck. Awesome, thank you. At the Department of Commerce, our main mission is to strengthen communities, and we do that in many different ways. We have over 100 programs through the Department of Commerce with that goal of strengthening communities. The place where I work is in the Office of Economic Development and Competitiveness. And I'm a sector lead. So sector leads in Washington State work closely with the governor's office and industry and government leaders. And we forge public and private partnerships and also policy to enhance the workforce and to really further high growth industries in Washington State. So I listed the key sectors here on this slide, which are, many of them are things that you would think of in Washington State. Very recently, the creative economy was added as a key sector in Washington State, which is very exciting for us. In recent years, the legislature has really recognized the creative economy in many different ways. One of them is establishing the creative economy as a key sector. Also, a creative economy strategic plan and study that was funded by the state legislature. The state legislature has also invested very heavily in the arts through support through ArtsWA, and then also invested in a film incentive to attract film to Washington State. Basically, moving the film incentive from $3.5 million to $15 million annually, and making it more competitive with other states statewide. So the Washington State creative economy, the US Department of Commerce, BEA, in March of this year released a report that showed that the Washington State creative economy comprises 10.3% of our state's gross domestic product, which is a lot. We also have $62.4 billion in revenue through the creative economy and more than 180,000 jobs. Huge. I'm really proud of this slide. This is a slide showing the percentage of GDP in states around the country. You look up there in the upper left-hand corner of the map, and there's Washington State. If you look really closely, you'll see that we are the top state in the nation as far as percent of GDP of the creative economy in the US. We're the only state in the nation that grew in creative economy throughout the pandemic. A lot of what you see in that growth is the creative output that happens through web content streaming and music streaming, that sort of thing. So while overall the creative economy has grown during the pandemic, we've also seen some of the industries in the creative economy being very hard hit. Many of the industries in the creative economy were the first to close and the last to reopen. And they have continued reduction in audiences. Think about your live music venues, your theaters, your museums. It's been a tough road for the creative economy in general. So looking at the future for the creative economy, one of the things that I think is really special for Washington State is that we've put together a creative economy strategic plan group. And over the next year and a half or so, we're going to be working to define the creative economy. If you Google creative economy, you're going to see many different definitions depending on where you're looking around the United States or around the world. There's not a certain set of next codes or industries that necessarily belong in that definition. And so we have the opportunity with a work group of creative economy professionals and stakeholders statewide to define the creative economy for Washington State and to create that common vocabulary for Washington State. That's going to be the first step in us being able to grow the creative economy in Washington State. We are partnering with WSMA and they're leaders in creative economy data and development. They're based in Denver, and it's really exciting to be doing that work. So another thing that we're working on in cooperation with Lynn and her team is the Working Washington Round 5 and Convention Center grant programs. Michael will go into this in a minute, but one of the very exciting things that has happened in the last legislative session is that 60% of the funding for the Working Washington Round 5 program is dedicated to arts, science, and heritage cultural organizations around our state. The reason why that's important is that slide that I just showed you about a huge decrease, more than 73% decrease in a lot of the performing arts organizations throughout the pandemic. And so it's really special to be able to turn around and support those industries that are hardest hit. Michael, do you want to jump in?
Thank you, Shannon. So we're going to start the kind of formal presentation about these two grants, the Working Washington Grants Round 5 and Convention Center Grants programs. And this is just a list of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to do an overview of the programs, look at the eligibility, the application requirements, what gets considered when an application is reviewed, the Technical Support Center, the general timeline for both grants, and some helpful resources. So first off, we're going to talk about Working Washington Grants Round 5. As Shannon was just telling you, 60% of the 70 million that was allotted by the legislature is going towards the creative economy. So you can see this is eligible for-profit businesses and nonprofit organizations that are in the arts, heritage, and science sectors, including those that operate the live entertainment venues. The other 40% is going to just about everyone else. This includes hospitality, fitness, taxis, and personal services. The maximum grant award that someone can receive for round 5 is $75,000. And here's that bird's eye view snapshot. This program offers one-time grants to small for-profit and nonprofit businesses and organizations that had financial hardship due to COVID-19 and the related public health measures that were put in place. So what are the requirements? And you're going to see a lot of these same requirements show back up for convention center grants. First of all, you need to be an active for-profit or nonprofit business or organization. You need a UBI or an EIN number. You need to be physically located in Washington State and have been in operation prior to January 1st of 2021. For finances, you need to be able to show financial hardship because of the pandemic. In terms of income thresholds, you need to have made no more than 5 million in income in 2019 and at least 10,000 in 2019 and 2020. And for all that revenue, at least 51% of it needs to have been generated here in Washington State. Some other eligibility considerations. You can't use this money to pay for other government fees. So we have that phrased as have necessary business. You can't have necessary business costs that are, sorry, the necessary business costs or expenses need to not be government fees or taxes. And you need to have not permanently closed or do not intend to permanently close this year in 2022. And you need to have followed all COVID-19 health requirements. There's another bullet point that's going to come up later in the convention center grants that applies here, so I'm going to mention it. If you have more than one business, you can only apply for one, and we suggest that you apply for either your largest or your most impacted business. Here's the big list of the ineligible entities. For folks who are familiar with prior rounds of Working Washington grants, there won't be a lot of surprises here. And all of this information is available on the program guidelines that are published online, and we can be sharing those links with you. I'm going to change now to talk about the Convention Center Grants program a bit. So this is a $5 million allotment, and eligible applicants to this grant must show proof that at least 25% of their revenue is created in part by conventions hosted in Washington State. So don't think as much of the Washington State Convention Center itself, but all the businesses, all the vendors that depend on that activity for their economic stability. And the awards here can go up to $500,000. Our bird's eye view is this program offers one-time emergency relief grants to for-profit and nonprofit businesses that depend on the economic activity created through conventions hosted in Washington State. Here's our eligibility for CCG. A lot of it is similar to round 5. You need to be an active for-profit or nonprofit. You need a UBI or an EIN. Here's where we get into specifics for CCG. You need to have hosted an in-person convention or depended on the function of a convention to sell goods or services. It needs to have been a canceled convention or experienced a reduction in participants in 2020 or 2021. And you need financial documentation for the years 2019, 2020, and 21. Finances, just like in round 5, this is pandemic relief. You need to be able to show financial hardship because of the pandemic. Specific to CCG, you need to show that more than 25% of your revenue came from conventions. The income threshold is a little different from round 5. You can't have reported more than 100 million in 2019, but like round 5, you need a revenue of at least 10,000 in 2019. And just like round 5, at least 51% of that revenue needs to have been generated in Washington State. Just like round 5, you can't use this money to pay for other government fees or taxes. You cannot be permanently closed or intend to close this year in 2022, and you need to have followed all COVID-19 health requirements. And here's that bullet point I was talking about earlier. Applicants must apply for one business only. Those with multiple businesses should apply on behalf of their largest or most impacted business. Here is the list of ineligible entities for the Convention Center grants. It is very similar to the round 5, but you can see a couple differences. Those first 2 bullet points, if you can read them, I'll read them out loud as well. Businesses that make 25% of annual revenue from convention activities, and also trade shows or exhibitions, or professionally exclusive conventions, conferences, or summits. Those are some of the differences between round 5 and Convention Center grants, and none of them are too surprising, but they're important to understand. What will you need to apply? You will need an active Washington State Unified Business Identifier, UBI number. This can be a business license, business registration, tax registration, an employee identification number, EIN, if applicable, and the unique entity identifier, the UEI number. This is a new number. It changed in April of this year from the DUNS number, if some of you are familiar with that, to the UEI. And the UEI is required to receive federal funds. And because federal funds are behind both Working Washington Round 5 and the Convention Center grants, applicants will need a UEI to receive funds. You can apply, you can be approved for a grant, but you cannot receive funds until you have that UEI. You will also need a valid government issued photo ID of the business owner or the authorized nonprofit representative, and annual business revenues from 2019, 20, and 21. And businesses established in 2020 only need to put in their 2020 and 2021 revenues for Working Washington Round 5. However, the 2019 revenues are required for the Convention Center Grant Program. That also applies to what I'm going to say below. What you'll need to upload is your valid government issued photo ID of the business owner or the authorized nonprofit representative. If you're a tribal member-owned business, you'll need the verification of that, license or registration from federally recognized tribe in Washington State. You will also need to upload the documentation, like I said, for 2019, 20, and 21. For round 5, you only need 20 and 21. However, 2019 financial documents are required, again, for the Convention Center Grant Program. Here is a list of the acceptable, the applicable financial documents. They may include one or more of the following. There are several IRS forms here from the 1040 all the way down to several forms of the 990 for nonprofits. What gets considered when the application is reviewed? They are looking for a reduction in revenue or activity between 2019 and 2020. For the Convention Center grants applications, they may also consider the size of the business measured by the 2019 revenue and reduction in revenue from 2019 compared to 2020 or 2021. They will also consider recent Working Washington grants that the applicant has received. They'll consider whether or not the for-profit or nonprofit is operating in a distressed area. You can see a link there. And then there's also a listing out of the 15 counties identified by the state as a distressed area. And that full list is down there at the bottom of this slide. Consideration may also be given to business owners who self-identify as a minority, veteran, LGBTQ+, or women. And for eligible nonprofit businesses, the mission must provide support or services to underserved or underrepresented communities. What kind of technical support will be available? Starting August 15th, the support materials will be translated into 15 languages. You can see the full list here, from Spanish and Vietnamese to Chinese, Lao, and Marshallese. On August 17th, the portal will open, and at that point, there will be a dedicated phone number and email address for questions with support in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. One thing we want to suggest is that we really encourage all the applicants to use that email address for the quickest response. Again, that is not live now. This will open on August 17th, that phone and email support. Just about the grant, the partners include the Washington State Arts Commission, ArtsWA, that's me and our team, Submittable, who is the vendor for the application. The program guidelines, eligibility, criteria, and FAQs are available at commercegrants.com. I really encourage you to visit that site if you haven't already. There's a wealth of information there, including future webinars. The general timeline for both these grants is the portal will open on August 17th in the morning and close at 5:00 p.m. PST on Friday, September 9th. That's a total of 24 days. From mid to late September, the applications will be reviewed, and then in early October, Commerce will begin to notify the grantees and disperse the funding. So where can you go to learn more? commercegrants.com. That is the main place to go. sam.gov for the UEI, and go to our page, arts.wa.gov, for a place to sign up for email updates and where you can download the free partner toolkit. I want to thank you, and we'll be turning things around for a Q&A.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Lynn, for that furious response to all those questions in the chat. I wanted to just say, we have over 140 folks who registered, and I want to make sure that we have as much time as possible for questions. You have posted some in the Q&A, and that's great. Do that. But if there are folks who want to ask questions, now's the time. So I have a quick question. This is a lot of material. And if you're a business owner, a small artist or a musician, you really don't have experience writing grants, if you have revenue over 10,000, you can apply. Is there any resource beyond what you're providing where folks can go and learn how to put in an application? Do you have any other resources available, or should they just contact this number once the portal opens?
Thanks for that question, Lisa. I'd say, first of all, the application is very straightforward and very simple. The team has worked very hard on making sure that only the necessary questions and information are there. Please, I encourage everyone to apply, and it should take less than an hour to complete the application. Very accessible. It's also available in multiple different languages, which is helpful as well. And then secondly, if you go to commercegrants.com, or if you go to the ArtsWA or Working Washington website, you'll see a list of webinars that are happening in the community. And so there are many different opportunities for folks to come in and learn a little bit more, ask more questions about the application. Once our application opens on August 17th, we'll have regular hours of customer support, again, in multiple different languages, both via email and via phone. Anything that you would add, Michael or Lynn?
That seemed to cover it well, Shannon.
I do know that WSMA is partnering with One Eastside Spark on the 18th of August. On that day, you folks are going to be actually opening up, walking through the portal and helping folks understand how to actually submit their application. And there will be translations into different languages on that meeting. Any of you in the room, looks like there's 68 folks. If you have a question, you can click the raise hand button down below like that, and then we will be able to ask questions of the panelists, and we can go from there. So I can read these. What would be best for you, panelists?
I think maybe reading them would be easiest. And if we're able to, between Lynn and I, if we're able to answer them in typing, we can do this. We can do both.
Okay, so here's one. It says, this from Diana, how will the income be calculated for businesses that started in the last quarter of 2019?
That's a really, really great question. So when we talk about us taking into consideration that loss, because we are looking for those businesses that experience that financial hardship. And so there's a portion in the application, and we've tried to simplify things. So where there's 2 open text fields in the application, one of them is just tell us a little bit about your business. What is your business? What are the activities? What do you do? Who are you? And so that was similar to the prior round as well. And then the second open text field is the opportunity where a small business can actually describe the financial hardship they've experienced due to COVID-19. So though the financials for a business that opened until end of 2019 or 2020, there might not be a revenue loss, obviously from 2019 to 2020 or 2021, they will still have that opportunity to explain how they've experienced financial hardship due to the pandemic to demonstrate the financial hardship requirement.
That is super helpful. Another question is from Linda. Here's the question. I opened my business at the end of 2020. I did not make 10,000. Does that mean I don't qualify? Are you sending a PDF with all the links at the end? So I'll answer the second part of the question. Go for it on the first part.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you didn't make a minimum of $10,000 in revenue, your business is not eligible for this round of grant funding.
Yeah, and with regard to information from this call, we will be sending out a video with text at the bottom for folks to read or be able to watch the presentations themselves. We'll also be able to send out the slide decks that are here, as well as the Q&A and questions and answers, so that if you missed one of these, you'll be able to catch it at the end when we send out this summary. Let's see, any other questions?
I'm answering a few in the chat box or the Q&A box, so hopefully I'm answering them as quickly as possible. I know we're getting a lot of questions in here, which is wonderful. So I apologize if I'm not seeing any in the chat box. Shannon or Michael, is there some in the chat box that I may have overlooked?
Yeah, oh yeah, go for it.
Go ahead and answer one that I accidentally pushed answer live when I meant to type. And that is whether the UEI is required only for Convention Center or for both grants. And yes, it is required for both grants. The UEI is a federal number that recently replaced a DUNS number, and that's required for all federal funding that a business or a nonprofit might receive. We suggest that folks register for that UEI number as soon as possible. At the commercegrants.com page, there is a UEI FAQ page that you can take a look at. That also has resources that you can dip into. At the commercegrants.com page, there's also a list of webinars. Tomorrow morning, we have a webinar that overviews the Working Washington 5 and also UEI information. And we'll continue to provide more resources about that UEI information for folks who still need to register for that.
Excellent. And that is being put on by One Eastside Spark, who's an excellent partner. So there's another question. Would there be any additional financial documents required besides a 1040?
That's a great question. In our program details, there is a list of accepted financial documentation that is required for validating the revenues. I don't have those verbatim on the top of my mind. I don't know we want to put them in chat, but they are available in our program details. So there is a list, and an applicant's allowed to select from the list what financial documentation they will be uploading, and then they select what financial document and then upload it directly after.
Excellent. Here's another question. What if the COVID-19 experience resulted in a nonprofit unable to continue sponsoring the business and it was necessary to find a new nonprofit sponsor? As further result, the change in participation begins in 2020 under the direction of a new fiscal sponsor. That's a complex question. So if you want to answer it now, that's fine, or you can do it in writing, whatever you prefer.
So fiscal sponsors cannot apply on behalf of more than one business. So they can only apply for their own business or for a project that is the largest project or the most impacted. So if you're sponsored by a fiscal sponsor, you cannot use them to apply for your own project. However, if you are sponsored by a fiscal sponsor and your arrangement allows you to have your own UBI and meet all of the other eligibility requirements, and you have your own separate finances, you can apply on your own.
Okay, there's another question here. I went to set up our UEI and it said it couldn't find our company. We've been open for over 12 years. Is there an easier way to get that number?
That is a wonderful question. Unfortunately, we aren't the experts when it comes to UEI numbers. That is managed at the federal level. But Melinda, I know you're not the only one who's had issues getting their UEI number. I know that's probably not comforting at all, but you're definitely not the only one. We're hearing it from many different businesses, different types of struggles they're having. I would say the best thing, Melinda, on our website too, I know that Shannon put in the link for information on UEI FAQs that we have on commercegrants.com. Right at the top of our page, there's information on UEI, how to apply for UEI, and helpful FAQs. If you click that link at the bottom of that page and kind of right at top, there is who to call for support. There is PTAC centers across the state of Washington, and there's regional offices, and they have been actually contracted by the federal government to help assist businesses who are struggling getting their UEI or who run into issues like you've stated here that maybe need a little bit of extra help trying to figure out what the problem is. They seem to be the absolute experts in helping our small businesses. We have been hearing rave reviews about their assistance. So please reach out directly to them, state the issue with them, and they should be able to help you hand in hand try to resolve the issue.
Will you say that contact one more time, Lynn?
It's PTAC, and I don't want to botch, but yep.
Okay, great.
They're actually one of the contracted technical assistance partners to help small businesses in Washington State register through the UEI process.
Perfect. That's a really good thing to know. Kelly Ragsdale has their hand up. Would you be, can you share your question? I don't know if you just need to unmute. There you go.
There it came. Yeah, I was wondering, I was thinking previously that we were able to apply with the fiscal year versus a calendar year. I was just curious about that.
So for this, these next round of grants, Working Washington Round 5 and Convention Center, we're requiring calendar year for your revenues.
Okay.
There's another question here. Are supply chain disruptions considered related to COVID-19 reduction in business income, i.e. not able to receive goods to sell?
I'm sorry, do you mind repeating that question, Lisa?
Yeah, this is from Margie Moore. Are supply chain disruptions considered related to COVID-19 reduction in business income? So if they couldn't supply something, there was a supply chain issue, is that reduction in business income an eligible reason for being able to apply?
Well, it has to be something that you can demonstrate and validate. So
So you
we
can
would expect-
document it. Yeah,
What we would expect to see it validated in your revenues and that loss. So almost all, if not every single business has experienced supply chain interruptions. So if that is directly related to your financial hardship and your reduction in revenues, then we would expect to see that in the financial documentation. But of course, we can't take into consideration forecasts because those are really unknown.
great. We have a hand up by Eumuro Lake. I know I didn't pronounce that right, but please ask your question.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you including me. My question is that I'm a medical doctor. I opened a private practice in February of 2020, just a month before most of the lockdowns, and have been very severely impacted financially by COVID. So I was reading some of the eligibility and ineligibility requirements and wanted to clarify if I would be eligible for this
Yeah,
grant.
Great question.
Yeah, doctors and healthcare, surgeons, dentists, chiropractors are not eligible for this round of grant funding.
Okay, is there like maybe a conjugate or other parallel grant that might be
Potential future grants that may arise, it's always up in the air. I always hope there is always more funding available for our small businesses. That would always be my personal hope. Right now, I don't know at Commerce and OEDC if we're receiving any more funding, in the future for next round of small business grants. However, we do have a lot of programs that I am not familiar with that we would be posting on commercegrants.com. So other opportunities and or additional resources and information on programs which you may be eligible for in the future will be posted on commercegrants.com. So I know there's been a lot of funding in this last session, lots of information and programs have yet to be developed or are under development. So I'd urge you just to please check the resources that we have available on our page and check back often because things are added as quickly as we can get it up. And so there could potentially be something that your business may be eligible for coming soon. And also, we also have information on our Flex Fund program, which the information is on our site right now. So that might be something that you might want to look into as well.
I'm sorry,
There's
could you
another-
repeat the last thing just again, one time?
Yeah,
It's
go
called
for
the Flex Fund. So
Mhm.
these are meant for small micro businesses. They are really small, low interest, low barrier access to loans to help recovery and or business expenses.
Thank you.
It's a loan fund, and we'll put the link in there. There's a question from Anne-Marie Martin. Is hardship from 2020 allowable? From year over year comparisons, 2022 is much lower than previous years.
Let me see. I want to make sure I understand the question. Is 2020?
Is hardship from 2022 allowable? From year over year comparisons, 2022 is much lower than previous years.
We're not looking at revenues for 2022. We're in the application itself. We're asking applicants to provide revenues for 2019, 2020, and 2021.
Okay. So there's just a note of despair here. I've spent the last 30 minutes trying to figure out the UEI. It's a black hole and just circles, no clear path. And so Ken, I would recommend you connect with PTAC. They're there to help you. And I think we could put a contact in there if, oh yeah, Shannon just put that in the chat.
I'll add the general PTAC website, including locations that are specific to each area in Washington State. But the link that I just put in is a video that PTAC put together for UEI applicants.
Excellent.
And Michael just dropped in the Washington PTAC locations. There was somebody else earlier in the chat who said that they were experiencing problems and going back and forth with sam.gov and contacted their PTAC, and they're getting the help that they need. So we really suggest that you take advantage of that resource.
Okay, so there's a question here from Abukar Youssef, and that is, are supply chain disruptions considered, related to, I think we already did that one. I'm so sorry. Here's a question from Otis Manning. Churches that are nonprofits are not required to file the IRS 990 form. Are churches' financial statements sufficient?
Religious organizations are not eligible to apply for this round of grant funding.
Okay, good to know. Any other questions? I think I know I missed some in the chat. If Scott asked if I had a DUNS number prior to UEI switch, will I now have a UEI?
That's a great question, Scott. It's my understanding that if you previously had a DUNS number, you were automatically assigned a new UEI number. So I believe if you go to sam.gov and actually sign into your account, you should in your account have your UEI number listed if you already had a DUNS number. But if you're experiencing issues logging in and or trying to access your account, please reach out to PTAC so they can help you. But it's my understanding that UEI numbers for those that had a DUNS number are automatically assigned.
Great. Another question here from Jessica Chang. Would adult nursing homes qualify to apply?
Adult nursing homes are not eligible for this round of grant funding.
Right. So I have another quick question, and that is for nonprofits who have experience serving artists and musicians and choreographers, but they don't have a formal program. Are they eligible, or do they need to have a special designation or expertise in serving creatives?
I think, Lisa, if they meet the eligibility requirements in general, they would be eligible to apply. I think that Lynn might have mentioned earlier in the application, as the application opens, there's a very short eligibility quiz. And so it takes very little time to move through that quiz. And so it's a good idea if anyone has questions to go in and give it a try. Do that eligibility quiz when it opens on August 17th. And as far as the difference between cultural organizations and other businesses in Washington State, 60% of the funding is dedicated to the arts, science, and heritage cultural organizations and businesses in Washington State, and 40% to most other types of businesses in Washington State. So yeah, I think that they definitely should take the time to apply.
Okay, great. There's a question here, comes from drivers that hold a for-hire permit and drive for themselves as independent drivers, but also for Uber. Is there anything they can do to become eligible?
Well, if they operate their own independent ride service, like a taxi, and they have their own UBI and their own business entity, they can apply, but they cannot apply if they're applying as a business that operates, under Lyft and Uber and or third-party delivery drivers.
Great. Okay. So I have another question. So for conventions, there are small, really rural communities that have convention centers. Do you have any special, I don't know, perspectives or ways that rural communities can make a compelling application? Sometimes it's just harder to be competitive when you don't have a staff writer or a grant writer on your staff.
Yeah, so similar to the grant application for Working Washington Round 5, we've set the application up for convention centers the exact same way,
Okay.
knowing that, our small businesses don't have, grant staff on hand. So not typical to other grant applications that most are probably familiar with. Ours is very simple. The majority of questions are yes or no, and easy fill in the blank one line with a few open text fields. And then the remainder is, providing the uploads to validate the financials in your application. And just to clarify, the convention center event grant is not intended for the conventions themselves and is not eligible to government entities or local governments. So it is intended for those individual businesses that actually host, large conventions and rent out those conventions. It is intended for those small, businesses that are dependent on the economic activity created through conventions. So maybe they attend conventions and are vendors and participate in many conventions around the state. So just want to add that point of clarification. It's not intended for the conventions themselves.
Super helpful. Anyone else in the room who has a question, you just simply click the little raised hand button at the bottom of the page. And you can talk directly to the panelists. So another question I have is, so there are agents and entities that book concerts and musicians in different venues. They would be eligible for this.
If they meet the eligibility requirements, then we encourage them to apply. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and tell us what you do. We want to hear from you. So I know for many, just describing the title of their business and or providing their NAICS code, that's not enough. And so we've heard loud and clear in previous rounds, our small businesses want to explain and describe who they are and what their business is. And so we've provided that open text field for you, to provide that information to the state of Washington, so we can take that into consideration when we're doing our application reviews. And that's consistent with all prior Working Washington grant rounds as well.
Great. Here's a question from Taryn. Sorry, somebody's already answered this question. Just to clarify, did you say artists can only be eligible if they receive 10,000 in revenue?
Yeah, there is a minimum revenue threshold to be eligible to apply, in addition to meeting all the other eligibility criteria. For Working Washington Round 5, you had to have a minimum of 10,000 in revenue in 2019 or 2020. So if you only made 5,000 in 2019, but then 20,000 in 2020, you would be eligible to apply. For the convention center event grants, it has to be in 2019. That is the difference.
Yeah, okay, there's another question from Andre, and the question is, I want to ask a question from some of my friends regarding the type of businesses that qualify. Would a general construction contractor qualify? Cleaning business, event decoration business? Those are some examples.
Hi, Andre. I hope I said the name correctly. Yes to all three, as long as they meet the eligibility requirements.
Great. And then there was a question from Jeff Barehand. I missed the beginning of this. Will this be recorded? Yes, it will be recorded, as will the questions and answers be sent to those who registered for the event. Any other questions? We're getting close to the end of our presentation. Feel free to just raise your hand or put a question in the chat. So here's a question from Rowan Garnett. I'm not sure I pronounced that right. Question related to IDs. Does state issued ID have to be Washington state driver's license?
No, it can include a Washington state driver's license. So the ID has to be valid, means it can't be expired, but it can also include a passport, a state issued ID card of any sort, as long as it's government issued. It can include a tribal ID card. It can include your driver's license. It can be an enhanced driver's license. So there's many forms of valid ID, as long as it's government issued and generally has your photo on it.
Great. Here's a question from Daniel. Do you ever have startup grants available? And what I would love to do is just for a moment say that Evergreen BizLink is a resource any business in the state can go to right now to find resources you need. Not necessarily grants, but business training, technical assistance, and small microloans. And so if you are interested as a business owner, you can check this resource out. We just put it in the chat. There are some providers out there on this network that do provide grants. So do check out that resource. Another question from Mary Jackson, are the small business that do the cleaning for events eligible?
If you, I'm assuming you mean for the convention center grants, Mary? If not, I can answer both.
Yeah.
For the convention center event grants, if you meet the eligibility criteria for the convention center grant round, we encourage you to apply. So take a look at that, Mary, and if your business meets that eligibility criteria, please apply. And also look into the Working Wash Round 5 as well. So this is a really great time to bring this up. It could be that some businesses may meet the eligibility criteria for both programs. And so we encourage, if you do, we encourage you to consider applying for both.
Great answer. There's a question here from Victor Cardeneta. And the question is, does a nonprofit with a business development program that holds cultural events at its facilities as a platform for performers, artists, and artisans for income opportunity apply? I'm assuming that can a nonprofit apply that does this work?
Yes, we would encourage them to apply as long as they meet all of the eligibility requirements. Yes.
That's kind of what it's intended for. Let's see. Any other questions? With all the links in the chat box be shared as well, and the answer is yes. Any other questions? We have about 8 minutes left. You've done an excellent job, you panelists. Thank you for your incredible patience. The question is, where do you find the eligibility requirements? It might be a good idea to just put in the links again for folks who may have come late to the grant information. I also know you folks have come together and put the list of questions, FAQs together for businesses. If you could put that in the chat too, that'd be really great. Awesome, that was very fast. So there have been similar questions that have been asked and they have been answered, and it's a great place to start before you do your application. So again, the application doesn't open until
August 17th. It'll open the morning of August 17th, and it'll be open for 24 days, and it will close Friday, September 9th at 5 p.m. Pacific. So that is a hard cutoff time. So applications that come in after that 5 p.m. cutoff will not be considered. And that the application portals, the timeframes are the exact same for the Working Washington Round 5 and the Convention Center event grants. So they both launch at the same time.
So there's a question here, Lisa, I may have missed this, but are businesses who are on the ineligible to apply list, for example, professional services, are they also encouraged to apply? I didn't get that right, but.
No, if you're listed on the ineligible list, you're not eligible to apply.
Another quick question, will their phone code verification be required? I will be out of the country but not able to access my phone for verification.
There's no process in the application that requires a phone verification for our applications. So to access the actual application portals, you will be asked to register via your email address to log into our partner platform Submittable, and then you'll gain access to the application. So if you applied in previous grant rounds and have a Submittable account, you can use that same email and password. If you forgot your password, you can simply click forget password, and then you can update your email password. But you will need access to your email to get the confirmation emails and to get a registration set up in Submittable to begin the application.
Excellent. And I just want to share one more time, one of our incredible partners, One Eastside Spark, on August 18th, after the platform opens, will be putting on a webinar at 9 a.m. And they're holding this in order to help folks have a step-by-step walkthrough of the Working Washington 5 application. On this webinar, the speakers will provide, just this orientation to the grant portal and goodness. Thank you for putting that in the chat. So they'll be able to step through the portal and the application process, and the session will include simultaneous translation in Korean, Mandarin, Russian, and Spanish, in addition to ASL. So you can read more here at this link, and you can register for that. We're proud to collaborate with this partner and excited to create this, be a part of this opportunity. One more question from Andre. Can the grant be used to pay for business coach consultant?
Well, it's really dependent on your business. So there is a list of eligible use of funds in our FAQs and our program details. Really, if it's necessary to continue business operations, and you can look at those other eligible use of funds, if you can answer yes to all those questions, then it would be an eligible use of funds. So that is something you as an individual business owner or operator will have to take a look at and make that determination for yourself.
Okay, and I hope I got that question from Andre. You had your hand up, and I'm sorry I missed that. Melinda had a quick question. You said to list our names for people to call. We're not going to be calling anybody on that list, but this is your list, so we have a track record of who attended. So she's just sharing her name is Melinda Lewis with Anytime Fitness. I look forward to the opportunity getting help with the grant money. Okay.
Great,
Let's
Melinda.
see. Yep. And so Andre, would you like to ask one last question? I think you already asked that question, I think. Friends, I think we are good. You all did a fantastic job. What a whirlwind. Thank you for just sharing your expertise and talent on this. I appreciate your time and energy. Thank you, Cherie, for all your background work, and Lynn for answering questions. Have a great afternoon. Look forward to seeing you on the 18th. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.